when it comes to Michigan, okay, I'm going to start with Cade McNamara. I don't think this is going to be an issue. He seems to be mature. He seems to be a team-oriented player. But, man, I didn't give myself much thought to scan college football over the last 10, 15, 20 years, whenever to run across a situation like this where there's been a player at the quarterback position lead the team to a conference championship, a playoff appearance, and in the old days, major bowl game, whatever, that there's been a situation like this and then benched, and he's clearly the number 2 the next season. So he may be needed at some point. He just may be needed. Just look out for that. And he didn't play well. I don't know that we can really gain much from that, but he didn't play as well in those 2 games that he played, game and a half, whatever, than he played last season for the most part. So just something to look out for there. Your number 2 running back, Donovan Edwards, has been banged up. I don't know what his status is going forward, but I see that C.J. Stokes was the guy, not a highly recruited back, highly ranked player coming out of South Carolina, but he got the bulk of the carries in relief of Blake Corum. But you need 2 backs at least. Just interesting there if they have that second guy, if a Donovan Edwards in particular is or Blake Corum. We don't want anything to happen to him, but if it does, who would be that second guy that's coming up from the rest of the ranks of the running back room?
All right, let me address the first 2. If we could
Sure.
do this. So I think it's possible that Cade won't play again the rest of the year, based on what I understand of the nature of his injury. I think at least you're looking well into October before you see him again, from what I understand. So I think whatever, if ever, and this isn't even the same as Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence, because he transferred right away in order to take a red shirt, right? So he transferred to Missouri like the next week. And remember, that became a very bitter thing with Dabo, where he wouldn't give him a national championship ring and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's fully J.J. McCarthy's team now. I mean, you won't even have Cade McNamara in a helmet on the sidelines, at least for the next several weeks. So I think that settles that matter. On the Donovan Edwards front, my understanding is that if we were playing someone who mattered, you would have seen him play this weekend. And that was largely a bit of an ankle, largely a precautionary thing given the nature of the opponent.
So my thought process on the running back is not necessarily that there's anything serious concerning Donovan Edwards, but if he or Corum go down, have we seen enough out of maybe a C.J. Stokes or another running back that would be comfortable with a second back coming from the rest of the running back room? And then with McNamara, okay, then it may be Alan Bowman who might be needed. So I'm talking about J.J. goes down for a game against a key opponent.
Sure.
You know, who that next guy is. And so that goes to Alan Bowman. He obviously showed us something at Texas Tech to a certain degree, but nowhere near Michigan starting quarterback status. It's always a new year, new team, as coaches like to tell us, despite the carryover. So the team's not been challenged. When they finally get a punch in the mouth, maybe that comes from Talia Tagovailoa this week, maybe those receivers, that offense, or it comes against Iowa the next week on the other side of the ball, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Just the response of the team against adversity. It seems as though because of the culture flip, and I know that you addressed that in your 5 points, that wouldn't seem to be an issue. But again, new year, new team. How do they respond to adversity when they finally see it in whatever week that's going to be?
I think that I think that's an excellent point. Remember, last year's team had a lot of preseason adversity, but Mark, it didn't trail in a game until at Nebraska, and then that didn't happen until like late in the fourth quarter. And correct me if I'm wrong, was that? And then against Penn State early in the first quarter. Those are the only 2 times Michigan. I think only Georgia trailed less last season than Michigan did. Okay, in all of college football. So last year's team didn't have to do much of that either. So yeah, that will be very interesting. I mean, if this is a very plausible scenario. All right, JJ comes out, sees a look he's not used to seeing. Misreads it, throws into coverage. Next play, Maryland hits one of those outstanding receivers in space. He makes one guy miss, takes it to the house. It's 7-0, right? That's a very plausible scenario to how this starts on Saturday. Very plausible. And how does Michigan react to that? Because it's also not a scenario they faced very often last year either. Really, the only game all season where someone came out with a sense of urgency and punched them in the mouth from the start was Penn State. They were up 13-0 late in the first half against Nebraska. Nebraska just made its run in the second half. So even though there are a lot of guys on last year's team, they didn't really have to face that very often a year ago either. So it'll be very interesting to see if and when that should happen.
And might have been worse than 13-0 if James Franklin would not have trusted his field goal kicker to be able to run like 12 yards against
Correct.
a stacked Michigan special teams. But that's James Franklin. I do have one question concerning your top five, and it concerns the pass rush.
Mm-hmm.
So are you concerned when you said the just sending 4 didn't typically get to the quarterback against these 3 opponents? So are you basing that on the last 2 games? The week one, I didn't break down
the week one. The week one, we clearly wanted to put some things on tape with new players and try. I told you all along that we were going to actually have to run more of the Ravens defense this year. McDonald didn't have to do a lot of that last year. All right, they started to do it, and then they realized especially when Ojabo started to come on, let's keep it pretty simple here. We got 2 first-round draft picks coming off the edge. Let's make teams try to find open spaces throwing against coverage with those guys getting pressure up front. This year, they were always going to have to run more of the Ravens defense. You saw some of that in the first game. The second game, they did almost none of it against Hawaii. And word is they actually had a gentleman's agreement with Timmy Chang, the coach, that by halftime we'd have emptied the bench to not get them essentially, slaughtered, not commit a felony out there. Okay. In this game, they went to more of their Ravens defense. We actually blitzed about 40% of pass plays. But there were several plays where, well into the second half, and we still had starters in there, that we tried to just rush 4. Now, Connecticut is out there. There's 3-step drops, and there's like 1.5-step drops. Literally, throw the ball as soon as you get the shotgun snap. Okay, and so unless you've got Myles Garrett or Chase Young coming off the edge, kind of hard to pressure a 3-step drop, right? But still, you would have figured at some point, given the physical advantage, one of these guys would have blown up a pass pro, right? One of these guys would have caught a guy taking a false step or a bad angle or taking too wide of a stance and blown up a play and wrecked it. Never saw that the entire time.
And then my last point, off of some of your points, would be it always intrigues me when there's a collection of skilled players at one position. There was another team this year in the last few weeks that I was really looking at the running back room. Actually, it was Oklahoma after Eric Gray, their starting running back, and how those guys are going to get utilized. Who gets trusted in pass protection, who is a really good outlet receiver, who actually has plays. He's a good enough receiver out of the backfield to actually have plays designed for him as a receiver, those sorts of things. Who do they run between the tackles? Who do they get a little bit more exotic with? That sort of thing. For Michigan, it's the wide receiver room. Who fills the slot? Who's the Hunter Renfrow type? Who's the deep guy? And we see Ronnie Bell getting most of the targets and the receptions and the productivity. So how do you see the wide receiver room looking?
I think you're going to see more of A.J. Henning in the Deebo Samuel role. And I think that's also going to be more and more of an RB2 or an RB3 with the intent now that you can put him interchangeably on the field with either Donovan Edwards or Blake Corum in the backfield. And when they run that jet sweep motion, you don't know whether that guy's getting the ball or not, whether the running back's getting the ball or not. Then you throw in a mobile quarterback on top of that, where you could fake both of those actions and then just have him run. I think you're going to see a lot of those packages with A.J. Henning. And you saw a little bit of that this past week against UConn. And then I think that Ronnie Bell was always better in the slot. He had to move to the outside in 2019 when Donovan Peoples-Jones and those guys moved on in 2018. But he's always done his best work in the slot, and so I think you're going to see him continue to operate there underneath. And if you look at their passing attack, it's been, what I like about it is it's been pretty, you guys keep backing off. These teams are really backing off, knowing the amount of athleticism and speed we have out there. So then we're just throwing these bubble screens and just out leveraging guys on the outside, getting 1 or 2 blocks and blowing them up for huge plays. I mean, you've watched this for years with Ohio State football, really since Urban Meyer came in, right? This approach. Fine, you guys want to back off, then we'll just run these bubble screens with these outstanding recruits and beat you that way. And so you decide what you want to do, right? And so I love where the offense is at. I think they've put a lot of necessary things on film on purpose, even little things. Like, it's pretty clear they want this freshman quarterback who's 6'3", 230, Alex Orji, to kind of be like a goal line package. They had him throw the ball out of that package this past week. They did that just to put it on package for folks like y'all, so that they learned their lesson from Jabril Peppers in 2016. Everybody knew he was never throwing it, never handing it off. You put that stuff on film now because now you got to respect that he might actually do it, right? So I like where things are trending offensively. Defensively, I am concerned about the lack of pressure with the front four. Now, there's only a couple of teams on the schedule this year that I think can take advantage of that, right? One of them, we just happen to be playing right away this weekend. And it's a pretty big step up in talent from what we've played the last 3 weeks to Maryland. I mean, I don't think Maryland's a top 15 team or anything of that nature. I certainly think they're a top 35, top 40 team. And so stepping up from there to this, that's a pretty big step up. So I will be fascinated to see how this game begins on Saturday.
You took me back to so many Saturday afternoons watching the Buckeyes games under Urban Meyer with my son, who hated the way he ran an offense, hated the bubble screens, just hated the way he ran an offense and the mannerisms on the sidelines, like he was going to have a stroke every other play. So anyway, that aside, my last comment is just that, yes, Michigan played nobody, but there was not a 31-14 game
right
in the they went out and they were, and to your points about the penalties.
That to me is the most impressive thing about the entire non-conference season. Mark, we played over 100 guys the last 2 weeks. We had 7 different quarterbacks throw the ball. Eight take a snap. 8 different quarterbacks take a snap. We're not seeing false starts. You know what I'm saying? We're not misaligning formationally. When that level of discipline is that ingrained into your depth chart, you're not coming out realizing, going through the motions, we can skunk these guys just by having a heartbeat. That, to me, is the absolute most exciting and important thing that I saw the last 3 weeks, was that level of discipline. It
is a great point. Well taken. Yep.
All right, good stuff, man. Hopefully we ranked higher than 26th in your poll next week. All right, man.
Maryland's ranked ahead of you.
Well, hey, they've played a tougher schedule. All right, man. I'll see you later. Thank you.
All right.